Legends of Andor is a cooperative adventure board game for 2 to 4 players, in which a band of heroes must work together to defend a fantasy realm from invading hordes. To secure Andor's borders, the heroes will embark on dangerous quests over the course of 5 unique scenarios, as well as a final scenario created by the players themselves. But as the clever game system keeps creatures on the march toward the castle, the players must balance their priorities carefully. At the heart of Legends of Andor is its unique narrative, the linked scenarios of which tell an overarching story as the players successfully complete objectives. For each scenario, or legend, a legend deck conveys the plot of an ever-unfolding tale, one in which the players are the protagonists. A wooden marker moves along the board's legend track at key points during each scenario, triggering the draw of a new legend card, the introduction of new game-altering effects, and the advancement of the story's plot. In the end, the players must endeavor to guide the fate of Andor through their heroic actions, bringing a happy ending to their epic fantasy tale. So that is a description of Legends of Andor as described on Board Game Geek. Now, Legends of Andor is a 2 to 4 player game, which is generally considered to be a cooperative game involving area movement, dice rolling, and variable player powers. It has an adventure or fantasy theme, and it is played on a game board, which can be played with either counters or miniatures. Most of the reviews that have looked at Legends of Andor consider it a Euro game with an Ameritrash feel. It has also been called a puzzle game. In Legends of Andor, you will select a character. Based on the character you have, which are pre-generated, the character will bring unique abilities or items to the game. In addition to the character, there will be opportunities during the game to acquire items which will add to the character's abilities or skills, such as a wineskin, a shield, a falcon, a bow, a telescope, and a helm. Now, in Legends of Andor, the game revolves around a time track. Certain actions that you do will either consume an hour, including movement, or a portion of an hour. There is also a legend track, which is an alphabetical tile going from A to N. This is advanced as you kill more monsters and as you reach certain milestones within the scenario. If you get to the end of the track before you have completed all your objectives, you lose the game. In addition, monsters or creatures are placed throughout the board in Legends of Andor as far as the setup. I think there is 4 Gors, Wardrakes, Trolls, and Skraw. And most of these will begin moving toward the castle. You have an option to fight them and prevent them from reaching the castle, or you can let them move. But if the castle at any time exceeds the number of creatures or monsters allowed for the scenario you are playing, you lose the game. I think currently there are 2 expansions for Legends of Andor. I believe one is called Legends of Hope. I also believe there is one, or maybe the Last Hope. And I also believe there is a new one called Journey to the North, or Journey Out North. Now, if you are comparing Legends of Andor to Journey to the Overland, the first thing that will become obvious is, 1, Journey to the Overland is a role-playing game. Legends of Andor is a board game. It is not a role-playing game in the sense that your characters are going to level up or move from one scenario to other scenario. I believe it is possible to play a character from the core game in the other expansions, but that doesn't necessarily mean the character is going to be suited for that expansion. I think there is a supplemental character pack where they did do some new characters and so forth. But it is a board game. It's played on the board. I believe the original board is double-sided, so you can play one which is kind of an interior, and then the other one is actually Andor itself, meaning the Kingdom of Andor. Now, I guess probably the biggest difference in role-playing game versus a board game is obviously your objectives. In Legends of Andor, every time you play the game, you will have a specific objective that you must complete during the course of that game. Meaning, if you do not complete the objective before the game ends, you lose the game, and that's it. In Journey to the Overland, as in most role-playing games, you may have an objective for that scenario, but that objective may just be part of a much broader sweeping objective for your character and for the game as a whole. So, for example, in Journey to the Overland, your main objective may be to defeat the Dragon Valron, which is one of the kind of boss scenarios. But while you're doing that, you may travel to a town or a castle and be given another scenario that involves going to a cave and defeating some trolls that have holed up there. And in exchange, the leader of that town or castle is going to give you something that will hopefully help you level up so that you can get closer to defeating the Dragon Valron. And in Journey to the Overland, even if you defeat the Dragon Valron, there's anywhere from 4 to 5 other major boss objectives, as well as, if you get the expansions and supplements, they bring their own objectives. And then there's kind of sweeping or overarching objectives in the game. Maybe you want to become a mayor of a town, right? There's objectives to do that. Maybe you want to get to the point where you're leading troops across the board. There's ways to do that. Maybe you want to become a 10th level warden, which is the equivalent of a wizard. There's ways to do that. So that is kind of one of the main things that separates it from Legends of Andor. One thing it does have in common with Legends of Andor is most of the gameplay in Journey to the Overland is concentrated on a game map, which basically resembles a game board. I mean, you could basically mount the map. It is a one-sided map, and you could use it as a game board. But the reason we use the map is basically it's a core game map of the core world. The map has infinite expandability because each scenario typically that I have done or I have worked on, I usually introduce another map. There are some that do not. They are scenarios within the core map, but usually if I am going to go to another location, I will either do a blowout map. So in the scenario, the Woodam Forest, it is a blowout of the Woodam Forest. In the scenario, the supplement, the urban expansion, it is a blowout map of the harbor or port town of Zafton. So Legends of Andor kind of has that same feature in that I believe Journey to the North is a sea expansion. So basically it pulls off to the kind of right or left or north or south of the Andor map. You're out in the sea and you are trying to prevent sea creatures from making it onto the coast. So it's the same mechanism. Instead of trying to prevent the gores or the war drakes from making it to the castle, you're trying to prevent sea creatures from making it to the coast. And I really like that element. I mean, I'm actually probably going to do some scenarios in Journey to the Overland where you do the same thing. Another feature of Legends of Andor is it does have the it has like the I guess I would call it an equipment board. So you have wineskins, you have a shield, falcon, and it has a cool little template where you can place these, like the helmet goes right on the spot over your character's head, and the bow can go on the spot by their arm and so forth. One of the things I really like is they have a falcon which you can use to exchange things with the other player on the board. so that if you are not next to each other, which normally you have to be next to each other to exchange things, you can use the Falcon, and it will carry something to that player for you. So I thought that was a pretty cool element of Legends of Andor. I mean, right now, I think Legends of Andor, the core game comes with 4 characters. Like I said, there was a character expansion. So, you do not create your own characters, as far as I know, in Legends of Andor, which you do in Journey to the Overland. You will create your characters. You will pick their skills. Legends of Andor, the characters are already pre-generated. They already have their skill. Every time you play that game, every time you play that character, that's kind of be what they are. And pretty much, other than one unique ability, or maybe, a unique ability that a legend card will temporarily give them, they're the same. Okay, so, the dwarf may be the same as, I don't know, the ranger or whatever the other character is called, other than, okay, the ranger can shoot from 3 hexes away instead of 2, for example, might be, what separates them. Another thing I do like about Legends of Andor is they have this kind of fog tokens elements where you can move up to these tokens that are pre-placed, and when you flip them over, you might find an item or you might find an objective. I actually do like that. I think that's kind of a cool element. Again, it's something I could probably put in Journey to the Overland, although I've kind of shied away from the tokens. I don't really like having to introduce tokens that are going to clutter up the map, or that might even just sit there. I mean, because in Journey to the Overland, there's no guarantee you're ever going to get to a location of any particular tokens. I mean, unless it's a specific scenario you're playing, you could start heading there and just literally wind up out in the middle of the ocean, depending on what kind of encounters you get. And I guess that's another thing. In Legends of Andor, you kind of play, and the characters are going to control the action based on their decisions. They can choose to fight, they can choose to move, they can choose to reveal fog tokens, and they're controlling the action every time they make turns. The monsters don't even attack you, right? And there's only 4, right? In Journey to the Overland, there's a deck of 118 encounters, and then there's other monsters inside the scenarios themselves, right, that just have stats. They don't have cards. But in Legends of Andor, you basically have 4 or 5, and that's it. And from what I understand, most don't attack you. I think there might be one that actually goes after you, but the rest are just basically trying to make it to the castle or make it on shore. But what I was saying was, in Legends of Andor, yeah, it's kind of open-ended in that you can choose how you are going to kind of accomplish your goal, but you have to go accomplish your goal. If you do not, you will automatically lose the game. That's just how it's played. Journey to Overland is not like that. As I said, you can be in the middle of a scenario, and a card will literally pull you out of that scenario and say, hey, you've just been kidnapped. You are now being drug off to these mountains. This is how you escape. Once you've escaped, see such and such. Okay, so bam. That doesn't mean you don't have to complete that scenario no more. It doesn't mean that you can't complete it. You might be able to break free and complete it and still kind of get your reward or whatever, if depending on whether it was a timed scenario or not. Again, combat, I believe, in Legends of Andor is kind of a simple roll mechanism. It's a roll off with the monsters. So I think even the items you get are just kind of modifiers. And again, Journey to the Overland uses more traditional things you would associate with combat, being stunned. The second edition actually introduces critical hits, which I didn't have in the first edition. But other than that, it's just being stunned, doing damage, armor, stuff like that. And I guess other than that, that is kind of like the main things that I think separates Journey to the Overland from Legends of Andor. Legends of Andor, like I said, it's a victory conditions type of game. You do have turn orders and actions, which we do have actions in Journey to the Overland. Typically, you will just have a daily action. Basically, you just choose what you're going to do that day. And usually it's movement, it's, visit a town, it's, resolve an encounter or whatever. So those are some of the similarities. Now, having said all that, and kind of to get to the whole point of why I'm starting this series is, I guess what I'd like to say is, okay, so if you own Legends of Andor and you're thinking of buying Journey to the Overland, or if you, I guess if you already own Journey to the Overland, and it really isn't my job to talk you into buying Legends of Andor. But if you own Legends of Andor and you're saying, okay, is Journey to the Overland just basically going to be the same thing as Legends of Andor, then the answer to that is no. If you are asking, is Journey to the Overland going to give me the feel that I get when I play Legends of Andor, then the answer to that is probably. Because if you like kind of having quests, kind of moving toward objectives, if you like, having encountering things and buying items and stuff like that, all of that is in Journey to the Overland. If you like playing on a board, right? If you like having the board out in front of you, seeing this town up there in the north and saying, I want to go up there, then yeah, you're probably going to like Journey to the Overland. I'm going to get into that more when I do reviews of some of the other games like Gloomhaven, because I think that's one of the things that separates Journey to the Overland from games like that is, in Journey to the Overland, that map is out in front of you, right? I do not like the we're going to reveal one tile at a time type of games, right? Dungeon Saga, I believe, does that by Mantic Games. It's a miniature game. I am more of the old school Hero Quest. When you played Hero Quest, you could see the whole dungeon when you opened up that board. And you wanted to go to this spot. You wanted to go to that spot. When you played Talisman, you could see that whole track. And you couldn't wait to get to this spot. In a lot of the modern games now, they want to, quote, reveal the board as you go. So you can play a game and sit there for 2 hours and never get past 3 tiles. Because you're doing combat on the tile, you're resting on the tile, you're searching the tile, and then you flip another tile finally, and you do combat on the tile, you search the tile, you're resting on the tile, and then you flip a tile. Now, this game may have 65, 70 tiles. But in the average game, and I've watched this on these gameplays, I mean, that's almost all I do on YouTube is watch gameplays of board games and some role-playing games. But I've seen people sit there for 2.5 hours and they never get past the 3rd tile. They have 3 tiles out after 2.5 hours. Watch Beast of War, some of these other places when they play Mice and Mystics. I've watched games that have went 3 hours and they never got past 3 tiles. I mean, and that really irks me because if I go through the trouble and you see all this beautiful art and you see all these beautiful locations, I want them out on the table, right? I want to be able to get to the end of there and say, we're going to this castle, we're going to that inn up there, we're going to that stagecoach, right? And that is also something when I get to the game Dungeon Degenerates that it has in common with Journey to the Overland. I love the map on Dungeon Degenerates. Even though it's very weird, I don't like the art style, but I love the map, right? And I'll get into more of that then. But for right now, this was kind of my comparison of Legends of Andor. Let me know if I missed anything or there was anything in particular you thought I would cover in more detail. I mean, I'm trying to do 5 of these, so I'm only kind of trying to hit the prescient points between the games, kind of what's same, what's different, and the feel you get. All right, take care, everybody, and God bless.